All right, what's going on, everybody? For today's video, I wanted to touch on a very important topic for supports, and that is counter building. Counter building is a crucial technique to learn in any MOBA, and it is one of the #1 things you can do to help your team win games. Now, in this video, I won't just be talking about what is counter building or when to counter build, what items to buy, stuff like that. I'll be covering as much as I can in this video as possible for you guys to better help you understand not only when to go certain items, but to help you guys get your minds thinking of the why as well. So that way in your own games, you don't have to go these cookie cutter builds. You can actually just make your own builds and play your own games. It's a very important tool to learn. And if you want to take this game seriously at all, whether it be ranked tournaments or just you want to be a good player, counter building is the #1 thing you need to master as a support player. And with all that said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first off, we are going to be talking about what counter building is. Now, counter building simply just means adjusting your items or your build to directly shut down whatever is carrying or whatever is going to carry the enemy team. Whether it's healing, crit, burst damage, or auto attack pressure, or even just flat out tankiness, everything a character does in Smite can directly be hard countered by certain items you can buy. And that's true for any MOBA. And so that in its truest form is what counter building is. If you can just remember one thing about counter building, that is what it is. Now, when you should start counter building is its own thing that could take its own video, definitely. So I will do my best to shorten it as much as possible for you guys, but just know that when to start counter building is unique for every scenario. But here's just a general overview take of when you should start counter building. And that is the moment you notice one enemy is getting ahead. That's when you start pivoting. That's when you change your build out completely. If you notice on the screen here, I have this build that I showcased in my video from the other day, the just general tank build, and I have these two open item slots in the build. Now, normally in Smite and in any MOBA, you want to go into a game already with a plan in mind of what you want to do. Now, I'm not saying you should have these cookie cutter builds all the time. You should absolutely be able to craft your own builds in specific situations based on what your character wants. But overall, you need to just have a rough understanding of what is good on your character, because at the end of the day, you can't just be counter building. You need to build to your own strengths, because if you're only building to the enemy strengths, then you're playing the game reactively instead of proactively, and that is how you will lose your games. It's important to be a good proactive and reactive player. There's a very good balance that needs to be had. Now, with all that said, typically when you want to start counter building in Smite is when you can afford to get out of your core items. So with this build that I have here, the mushroom into spirit robe, these are absolutely core in most scenarios. There are going to be some times when you have to drop the mushroom and just rush a talisman of purification if the enemy team has heavy crowd control. And just for the people that don't know, Talisman of Purification is an item that gives you and your entire team a beads effect if they're near you, allowing you to cleanse any crowd control on them. When I said earlier that the moment you notice one enemy getting ahead to start pivoting, what I mean by that is, let's say you're in duo lane and it's 3 minutes in the game. The ADC currently has 3 kills, or maybe the enemy jungler has 3 kills in those 3 minutes. That's when that's your time to start thinking about, okay, what are we going to do about that character? In this scenario that I have set up in this build, you have to get these first 2 items because these are your core items. Again, counter build is important, but you still have to play to your own strengths. So in this slot here, you're going to think about, what can I do about this problem character? And then you also want to think about, is this character a problem now, or are they going to be a problem later on in the game as well? Because sometimes they are just really good early and they fall off late. So that also has to be in your mind. If the case is, yes, they're a problem now and they're a problem late, then that's who you counter build against. Now, if it's an ADC or a burst damage mage or a jungler or a tank, you're going to have different options depending on who and what they are. And this is when we can actually talk about what itemizations you want to go when you're counter building. Depending on what the enemy is, Smite has a plethora of items to accommodate for that. And I can't go over all the different item types and items in this video because that would just make this way too long. And I really just want this to be a short, quick thing that you can just be like, oh, okay, that's what counter building is. Now, here's generally speaking, a good idea you can follow when you need to counter build in any scenario. If it's an ADC that is the problem character and you know they're going to be a problem character in the late game, you want items that are going to be anti-auto attack. Now, when I say ADC, I don't mean a hunter character like a Neath mid. I mean specifically an auto attack damage carry. That's what ADC stands for. It stands for attack damage carry. if you have a character on the enemy team that is an auto-based character and they are the problem character, you want items like Leviathan's Hide, Nemean Lion, and Chalet if they're magical. Items that can slow their attack speed or reduce their strength when they're attacking you. Another great option is Pharaoh's Curse or even Contagion, items like that, or even Spectral to reduce their critical strike chance or just flat out reducing their attack speed. Those are very good options and they are all very good to get early. If it's a heavy burst damage character that's the problem character, there's only two real ways to counter that. You either survive the burst or you can kill them and lock them down. Now, normally in support, you're not going to be able to kill somebody with just one item, so you're going to have to survive the burst. And the way you do that against a character with big burst is with a stat in the game called mitigations. Now, in SMITE 2, there are only two items that give mitigations, and that is Oni Hunter's Garb and Prophetic Cloak. I never ever recommend getting Prophetic Cloak right now in support, so it is Oni Hunter's Garb every day of the week. However, it is important to remember that the mushroom gives you damage reduction. Again, that is ideally what you do to survive the burst. Now, it's also a good idea to think about what your character has and they're lacking. If you're dying to burst, or if the burst character, like for instance, Scylla is the problem, they're going to be the problem in the late game, is the problem that you're just not tanky enough, or is the problem that you're not mobile enough? And if that's the case, then maybe a Circe's Hexstone, an item that gives you a free CC immune dash, is the viable play. Or even items like Stampede that grant you movement speed is the play. So those are the things you want to be thinking about. Not only the what is the problem, but why is that the problem? Why am I dying to this character? Is it just that they have that much burst? Or is it that I'm Ymir and I'm super immobile? Now, what if they're a heavy healing team? Because SMITE doesn't have any anti-heal items anymore. Well, you still have options about that. One of the strongest items right now in the game, if you are a character that benefits from it, is Brawler's Beatstick. Brawler's Beatstick will give you 50 protections as well as strength or intelligence, depending on which stat from items is higher. And you get that 50 protections if they use a heal around you. And the idea is if you're against a healer, the real way to counter healing is to just lock them down and burst them down. And Brawlers will let you do that. Other items, if they're going like Lifesteal, Contagion will let you do that. So you still have those tools, but although you can't directly counter healing in the game anymore, there's other ways around it. Typically, if you want to counter a healer, since you can't really fully itemize around that anymore, the way you counter healing is you use your voice, you communicate with your teammates, and you lock them down. CC will always win over healing. If they don't have beads, or if their beads are down, you can kill them. It's very easy. Doesn't matter how tanky they are, doesn't matter how much damage they do. If you can stun them for longer than a few seconds, and I don't mean like one character can stun them, I mean if you communicate with your team and you all stun them longer than a few seconds, you will kill them guaranteed. No character can survive that, not even with all the healing in the world. Now, what if they're a tank? What if that's the problem character? What if the enemy team is, let's say, for instance, they are 5 like bruiser characters. They don't have as much damage on the enemy team. If the enemy team is going full tank, you yourself also want to go somewhat of a tanky build, but you also want to get items that can counteract that. A great example of an item like that is Stone of Binding. This item gives you free protection reductions if you hit an enemy god with crowd control, hard crowd control. So this will inherently just reduce their protections. Now, it's also important to pick characters that can do that as well. Characters like Kepri or Cerberus have built-in protection shred in their kit. So those are also very important. But similar to the healers, if they're a heavy tank team, the way you're going to kill them is with lockdown. You want items that can CC them. You want characters that can CC them. Consider picking up items again like Circe's Hexstone, or anything with a silence on it, like Anchele, Breaching Gargoyle, this one right here. Items that inherently help you lock characters down. You could even pick up a Scepter of Dominion if you're really in comms with everybody. That's how you're going to counter those tanky characters. And we've already talked about it a little bit, but if they're crit heavy, then you would go Spectral, because that's the only item in the game that just inherently reduces critical damage. Actually, yeah, they made it back so it reduces critical damage. But those are the general types of just basic counter building things that you would want to look out for. And again, it's not just a simple who is the problem, it's who is the problem and who is going to be the problem. Typically in SMITE, you're only allotted like 2 to 3 counter building slots if you're lucky. I never recommend going more than that, because then, like I said earlier, you're just playing the game reactively instead of proactively. And proactive gameplay is the best gameplay. You still want to be reactive, but you have to have that good balance. So again, really just try to hammer in on picking the one biggest problem character, or maybe 2 problem characters, and how you can directly counteract that. And the one thing we didn't talk about is what to do if the enemy has a ton of lockdown, because we've talked about lockdown being a great counter to a lot of things. So what are you going to do if the enemy has a lot of lockdown? One of the things you can do, and a lot of people will disagree on me for saying this, but this is still the case in SMITE 2 as it was in SMITE 1. Don't be afraid to get beads as a support. Normally, you want your relic to be something like Sunder or Shell to keep your team alive or gain pressure. But if they have a heavy team that is super CC dominant, and a beads will save you from getting killed 5 times in the early game, or 20 times in the late game, please feel free to absolutely get that relic. It's not going to negatively impact your team because you're not going to feed. You're going to actually stay alive. You're going to be able to get your tools off and you'll be okay. Now, generally speaking, you don't want to have to rely on getting beads because SMITE 2 has support items that let you get beads for free, like Talisman of Purification or the new Rod of Asclepius. Typically speaking, you're allowed to go beads now. Just don't fall into the habit of getting it every game as support, but just know that you actually absolutely can get it if you need to. But other than that, you have a ton of other options. Again, if you're a character that lacks mobility, Circe's Hexstone is going to be very good because it gives you that CC immune dash that'll keep you alive. Other items that are really good, if they have a heavy lockdown team, are items like Spirit Robe, where if you're hit by hard crowd control, you gain protections and you heal, but that's a core item anyway, so you're going to get it most of the time anyway. You have Magi's Cloak. This item effectively just gives you a free no button. Anytime that somebody tries to hit you with a crowd control, you just immune it completely for a second and a half. So you have the options. It's just knowing when and why to go those options. So if you leave this video with one thing, I really just recommend that you practice what we talked about earlier in the sense of who is the problem character and who's going to be the problem character, as well as do I really need to be the one to stop them? The answer to that is most of the time going to be yes, but at the same time, don't sacrifice your own potential at the expense of trying to stop theirs. Because sometimes you're not going to be able to counter build enough. And then you're going to be a weak character that doesn't even properly do what they're trying to do with their build. So you want to have this good balance of items that benefit you and items that negatively impact the enemy team. So with all that said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know this was a bit of a different one, but I hope you guys enjoyed it anyway. If you did, please leave a like and comment on this video. And as always, please subscribe as that helps the channel grow immensely. I appreciate all of you for watching this, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace out.